How's it going, everyone? My name is Crysis, and I love movies. Like, a lot. And even though I didn't see that many movies in February, I more than made up for that in March and April. Jeez Louise, just wait for the next couple of videos. But for now, let's take a look back at what I saw in February. Starting off the month a few days late with Valiant One, I was pleasantly surprised. Another case of the trailer making it look worse than it actually was. This movie is one turbulent helicopter ride from being nothing special and a really bad movie at best. However, the cast and crew behind this movie turned this inspired by true events movie into something mildly special, telling the story of a squad of United States Army members trapped on the wrong side of the DMZ in the Koreas with all of the ups and downs that come with it. Everyone in the cast does fairly well in their roles, with the standouts being Chase Stokes in the lead role and Lana Condor as the secondary lead. It did keep me on the edge of my seat, especially toward the end, though it was fairly heavily forced tension to make a third act action sequence, but it was still a good movie nonetheless, and for that it earns a 7 out of 10. Up next was the first of two movies released for Valentine's Day, but not on that day specifically, Love Hurts, starring Kiwi Kwan and Ariana DeBose. Honestly, it's a really good story and is acted phenomenally by everyone in the cast, including Marshawn Lynch, which is not something that I ever expected to say. The comedy is decently timed, the action is great, and everything came together in the end in a way that I wasn't really expecting, but was pleasantly surprised at. It just worked, and I'm really glad that it did because Kiwi Kwan was a great choice for the role, bringing a bright attitude to a role that could have otherwise been super down in the dumps and just plain boring. While not perfect by any means, it still slots in nicely at an 8.5 out of 10. The next day, I saw the second Valentine's Day movie, Heart Eyes, starring Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, and it's exactly the kind of slasher rom-com you think it is. It doesn't try to innovate on the formula, it doesn't try to do anything too strange with its story or plot hooks, and because of that, it has a decent amount of charm to it. The chemistry between the two main characters, played by Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, feels a bit forced at times, but it isn't enough to fully take away from the vibe of the movie as a whole, which is just really fun and goofy. A cheesy Scream-like love story, it's nice enough to get a 7.5 from me. Taking a couple of weeks off for movies, I saw My Dead Friend Zoe next, and it hit a lot harder than I thought it would. To be fair, it's a fairly standard story about a veteran dealing with everyday life after the loss of one of her friends. However, where this story differs is the cause of the loss, which is hinted at in the trailers and throughout the movie, and the payoff for those hints is absolutely not what I was expecting. Hearing the pain in the main actress's voice as she talks to this version of the friend that's been living in her head since the death is heartbreaking, especially at the end of the movie. That being said, the cast did a phenomenal job, though it felt like the romance subplot was a mild afterthought, which did lead to a bit of an unresolved plot thread at the end, but one that isn't important enough to truly care about. Overall, it's a great movie with fantastic scenery, and it is a great watch if you just need to feel something. Nothing really more to say about this one, and it's getting a 9 out of 10. I next saw something I never wanted to see in the first place, but walked away mind blown after seeing it. Last Breath, starring Finn Cole, Simu Liu, and Woody Harrelson, based on the documentary of the same name, and honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a non-horror movie be as terrifying as Last Breath. Telling the true story of a deep-sea diver that was trapped on the bottom of the North Sea for over 40 minutes, it is gut-wrenching, terrifying, and an overall fantastic movie. The only downside was Simu Liu's character, I guess, but that was because he was such a no-nonsense character that it felt like he had shown up to set after reading his lines for the first time at times. I'm fairly certain they did a lot of the underwater scenes practically, or at least, in a giant tank filled with water, not necessarily the North Sea off the coast of Scotland. I would highly recommend this movie unless you are claustrophobic. It gets really rough at times, but that's kind of the point. It was rough then, I'm sure, and it was just as rough watching it now. For those reasons, it is getting a 9.5 out of 10. Following that, in the sole doubleheader of February, was a movie that was honestly mildly disappointing: Captain America Brave New World. And I'm not going to lie, I wanted to like this, and I did, but man, it was rough. A lot of the dialogue felt like it was trying too hard to be funny and relatable, including a scene that happens toward the end of the second act, or beginning of the third act, featuring Sam and another character. I won't say who because spoilers, but unfortunately, Marvel is still following the Thor Ragnarok and Love and Thunder method of cutting serious moments with bad jokes to cut the tension. Another thing that felt off was the action sequences. The hand-to-hand combat sections felt slow and clunky, like the fight choreographer just wasn't into it that day. But the ones that were fully CGI, like Sam in a dogfight with fighter planes, were so much better, probably because you can do a lot more with CGI than you can with real people. Plus, it felt more like a sequel to The Incredible Hulk from 2008 than it did a sequel to anything else in the MCU to this point, especially Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It was still decent, so it'll fall in at a 6.5, but it was still a fairly disappointing entry in the annals of the MCU. Up next is The Monkey, or as I like to call it, The Monkey That Kills People. If you're looking for a movie that is just trying to find creative ways to make people explode, then this is definitely the movie for you. In terms of the story, it's very bare bones, being based off of a short story by Stephen King, but then again, you're not going to this movie for the plot. Some of the deaths are clever, while others just feel meh. The acting was fine, I guess, but again, that's not really what you're seeing this for. There were a couple of weird casting choices for people who were in the movie for a single scene and are never seen again, and it threw me off for a good few seconds before pulling me back into the movie with another death scene. I'd probably watch this again if I had nothing better to do, but I wouldn't go out of my way to see it, and for that and everything else, it's gonna get a 6. Capping off the month of February, we have a movie whose trailer I first saw on TikTok of all things, Riff Raff, whose cast list is so long and full of good actors, I'm not even going to bother reading it, so instead I'll just put it on screen, like right here-ish. Riff Raff is a movie that is good on its own, but it stands as yet another victim of deceptive trailers. While it's a fun romp about a movie that's just trying to have a Happy New Year celebration at a cabin in the woods, no, not that one, it slows down so much at times that it drags on repeating some of the same stuff over and over again. There are a lot of questions that go unanswered by the time the movie is done, and a few of the actors seemed like they just didn't want to be there. Granted, Bill Murray being paired with Pete Davidson was perfect, and Ed Harris as a grumpy old father figure with an estranged son and ex-wife was an amazing casting choice, so there is that. I went into this with high hopes, and they were mostly met, I guess, but not in all the ways that I would have hoped. For these reasons, it'll get a 7.5 out of 10, no more, no less. In the month of February, I saw 8 movies for an average rating of 7.7. I walked into 2 of those showings, not knowing what they were, being My Dead Friend Zoe and Last Breath, and I only ended up paying for snacks at the movies. Again, love Stubbs, and no, I'm still not sponsored. It's been, I don't know how long since I uploaded the last one. Give me a break. To recap, in order of quality and my opinion, we had Last Breath, My Dead Friend Zoe, Love Hurts, Heart Eyes, and Riff Raff tied at 7.5, Valiant One, Captain America Brave New World, and last but not least, The Monkey. Again, if you want me to give you a full reviews of any of these movies, which will include spoilers, by the way, feel free to ask, and you may receive, depending on how busy I get with life and other obligations. The next one of these videos will be about the movies that I've seen in March, and given that it's more movies than January and February combined, it will be a bit of a longer video. Expect that one to go up a good chunk of time after this one because of the length of it. So until then, I will see you in the next one, and maybe you'll see something that I saw. Happy viewing.